Chapter 3 of the Defiant Agents. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by R.J. Davis. The Defiant Agent by Andre Norton. Chapter 3. Travis, one knee braced against the red earth, blinked as he parted a screen of tall, rust-brown grass with cautious fingers to look out into a valley where golden mist clouded most of the landscape. His head ached with dull persistence, the pain fostered in some way by his own bewilderment. To study the land ahead was like trying to see through one picture interposed over another and far different one. He knew what ought to be there, but what was before him was very dissimilar. A buff gray shape flitted through the tall cover grass, and Travis tensed. Mba Coyote. Or were these companions of his actual god, spirits who could choose their shape at will and had, oddly, this time assumed the bodies of man's tricky enemy? Were they Indendi, enemies? Or Dali and Bayakai, allies? In this mad world he did not know. Hidiki? His mind formed a word he did not speak. Friend. Yellow eyes met his directly. Dimly he had been aware, ever since awakening in this strange wilderness with the coming of morning light, that the four-footed ones trotted with him as he walked aimlessly had unbeast-like traits. Not only did they face him eye to eye, but in some ways they appeared able to read his thoughts. He had longed for water to ease the burning in his throat, the ever-present pain in his head, and the creatures had nudged him in another direction, bringing him to a pool where he had mouthed liquid with a strange, sweet, but not unpleasant taste. Now he had given them names, names which had come out of the welter of dreams which shadowed his stumbling journey across this weird country. Naliki-de-yu, maiden who walks ridges, was a female who continued to shepherd him alone, never venturing too far from his side. Najinta, he who scouts ahead, was a male who did just that, disappearing at long intervals and then returning to face the man and his mate as if conveying some report necessary to their journey. It was Naliki-de-yu who sought out Travis now, her red tongue loiling from her mouth as she panted. Not from exertion, he was certain of that. No, she was excited and eager. On the hunt. That was it. A hunt. Travis's own tongue ran across his lips as an impression hit him with feral force. There was meat. Rich, fresh, just ahead. Meat that lived, waiting to be killed. Inside him his own avid hunger aroused, shaking him further out of the crusting dream. His hands went to his waist, but the groping fingers did not find what vague memory told him should be there. A belt, heavy with knife in sheath. He examined his own body with attention to find he was adequately covered by breeches of a smooth, dull brown material which blended well with the vegetation about him. He wore a loose shirt, belted in at the narrow waist by a folded strip of cloth, the ends of which fluttered free. On his feet were tall moccasins, the leg pieces extending some distance up his calves, the toes turned up in rounded points. Some of this he found familiar, but these were fragments of memory. Again his mind fitted one picture above another. One thing he did know for sure, he had no weapons, and that realization struck home with a thrust of real and terrible fear, which tore away more of the bewilderment cloaking his mind. Naliki-de-yu was impatient, having advanced a step or two. She now looked back at him over her shoulder, yellow eyes slitted, her demand on him as instant and real as if she had voiced understandable words. Meat was waiting, and she was hungry. Also, she expected Travis to aid in the hunt at once. Though he could not match her fluid grace in moving through the grass, Travis followed her, keeping to cover. He shook his head vigorously, in spite of the stab of pain the motion cost him, and paid more attention to his surroundings. It was apparent that the earth under him, the grass around, the valley of the golden haze were all real, not part of a dream. Therefore, that other countryside which he kept seeing in a ghostly fashion was a hallucination. Even the air which he drew into his lungs and expelled again had a strange smell, or was it taste? He could not be sure which. He knew that hypno training could produce queer side effects, but this? Travis paused, staring unseeingly before him at the grass still waving from the coyote's passage. Hypno training? What was that? Now three pictures fought to focus in his mind. The two landscapes which did not match, and a shadowy third. He shook his head again, his hands to his temples. This only was real. The ground, the grass, the valley, the hunger in him, the hunt waiting. He forced himself to concentrate on the immediate present and the portion of world he could see, feel, scent, which lay here and now about him. The grass grew shorter as he proceeded in Nalik'ideyu's wake, but the haze was not thinning. It seemed to hang in patches, and when he ventured through the edge of a patch of it was like creeping through a fog of golden dancing motes with here and there a glittering speck whirling and darting like a living thing. Masked by the stuff, Travis reached a line of brush and sniffed. It was a warm scent, a heavy odor he could not identify, and yet one he associated with a living creature. Flat to earth, he pushed head and shoulders under the low limbs of the brush to look ahead. Here was a space where the fog did not hold, a pocket of earth clear under the morning sun, and grazing there were three animals. Again shock cleared a portion of Travis's bemused brain. They were about the size, he thought, of antelopes, and they had a general resemblance to those beasts in that they had four slender legs, a rounded body, and a head. But they had alien features, so alien as to hold him in open-mouthed amazement. The bodies had bare spots here and there, and patches of creamy fur? Or was it hair which hung in strips, as if the creatures had been partially plucked in a careless fashion? The necks were long and moved about in a serpentine motion, as though their spines were as limber as reptiles. On the end of those long and twisting necks were heads which also appeared more suitable to another species. Broad, rather flat, with a singular toad-like look, but furnished with horns set halfway down the nose, horns which began in a single root and then branched into two sharp points. They were unearthly. Again Travis blinked, brought his hand up to his head as he continued to view the browsers. There were three of them, two larger and with horns, the other a smaller beast with less of a ragged fur and only the beginning button of a protuberance on the nose. It was probably a calf. One of those mental alerts from the coyotes broke his absorption. Nalik'ideyu was not interested in the odd appearance of the grazing creatures. She was intent upon their usefulness in another way, as a full and satisfying meal, and she was again impatient with him for his dull response. His examination took a more practical turn. An antelope's defense was speed, though it could be tricked into hunting range through his inordinate curiosity. The slender legs of these beasts suggested a like degree of speed, and Travis had no weapons at all. Those nose horns had an ugly look. This thing might be a fighter rather than a runner, but the suggestion which had flashed from coyote to him had taken root. Travis was hungry. He was a hunter, and here was meat on the hoof, queer as it looked. Again he received a message. Naginta was on the opposite side of the clearing. If the creatures depended on speed, then Travis believed they would probably outrun not only him, but the coyotes as well